Cheann Comhairle, and I too am delighted to take part in this debate and welcome all the people in the public gallery and the interpreters. And I want to pay tribute to the Oireachtas Committee and to the chairperson, and also indeed to Senator Mark Daly and the other senators who persisted with this. And it's nearly 3 years ago since the Seanad defeated the last attempt at doing something in relation to the sign language by 3 votes. And those people who defeated that bill certainly weren't listening, despite having full hearing at that time, and they certainly didn't read any of the reports that were available. And also, in paying tribute to the Oireachtas Committee, I also want to pay tribute to Dr. John Bosco for his working paper on the recognition of Irish Sign Language, and indeed on revising that in 2012. I beg your pardon for going so fast. I'll slow down. The recognition of the unique linguistic and cultural identity of deaf people has already been done in 41 countries, including Northern Ireland, by recognising each country's individual sign language. In this country, the Education Act refers to the Irish Sign Language, but only as a tool to education and not as a right in itself. And I think it's important to point out, and again I have learned this myself as a result of the work done by the organisation in Galway, DeafHear, and by other organisations, that the Irish Sign Language is a language of itself. As has been pointed out by Deputy Ó Caoláin, it's a language of movement, space, of the hands and the eyes. But most significantly, the Irish Sign Language is a language of abstract communication. And this is something that we, with hearing, forget. It is not a watered-down version of English or Irish. Irish Sign Language is not a pictorial version for the world of spoken language. It is not an artificial form of communication devised by hearing people, nor indeed is it an incomplete or broken form of English of the hands. It is a language of abstract communication. The deaf culture is comprised of people who consider deafness to be a difference in human experience rather than a disability. And actually, I think, Minister, while you have been very positive, I'm going to come back to some of your weasel words in the midst of your long introduction, because if we look at what the deaf community are telling us, that it's a different experience and not a disability, therein is the clue that we, the government, and we as a society are disabling those with hearing impairment by not providing, as of human right and by legislation, services which they're entitled to so they can communicate with each other and with us, as of human right. And indeed, for many deaf people, Irish Sign Language is the only language they can acquire spontaneously and naturally without teaching. And so, Minister, I think that you're very positive. I think you want to do something. But it concerns me that you have listed out, in really what should be a celebratory speech today, you have listed out obstacle after obstacle. And I find that worrying. OK, well, perhaps you'll correct it, and perhaps I'm... Well, I apologise, Minister. I'll take those back, because really what upset me was when I listened to you very positively, and then when I looked at your bullet points in relation to the difficulties, one of the ones that jumped out at me was that you said there was no benefit to having a plan, a built-in plan, every 3 years. And it seems to me that that's exactly what is necessary in legislation, that we would have built-in targets and built-in plans, and that we in the Oireachtas would be forced to review that and to reflect and to see what have we achieved in a given space of time in relation to implementing legislation. Without that, we're going to have empty legislation. So if I used too strong words in relation to weasel words, I certainly, without hesitation, take them back. But it does strike me that 3 pages of small print highlighting obstacles, I think perhaps what the deaf community deserved perhaps was a hearing in the Dáil in relation to the obstacles that they seek to overcome. And there are 56 of them, I think, starting on page 8 of Dr. John Bosco's document. And he starts at number 1 and he goes up to 51 obstacles. Things that we don't even think about. I'll pick at random. Driving through a takeaway, not accessible. School tours are not accessible. In waiting rooms, when a nurse or staff member is calling for the next client or patient, the deaf person must try and lip read and so on. I won't read them all out, but there are 51 obstacles. The challenge is for us to overcome those obstacles and to go with the legislation, give it the thumbs up, tease out the practical difficulties at the committee stage later on. But for today, it should be a day of celebration, a day to say, sorry, actually, we should have done this before. We should have learned 3 years ago when the other legislation was voted down, and go forward.
Thank you very much, Deputy.